More on the liabilities question now from Tracy Hester, a professor of environmental law, director of the University of Houston's Law Center's Environment, Energy, and Natural Resource Center. Are there any real limits on BP's liability for this oil spill?
Well, there are limits for one particular subset of claims that can be brought against BP, which would be $75 million for claims brought for damages under the Oil Pollution Act. That cap does not apply, however, for direct removal costs, getting the oil actually out of the water. That amount's unlimited under the Oil Pollution Act. And that cap doesn't apply to state law tort lawsuits, and it obviously would also not apply to civil or criminal penalties that the United States or state governments might want to pursue.
Even under the $75 million cap, there are ways to even raise that, are there not, depending on allegations? The president was saying there was corner cutting on safety and things like that.
Well, if there's a cap, it's a pretty leaky one. The $75 million cap only applies if there is a situation where there hasn't been gross negligence or willful misconduct or failure to comply with federal safety or operational regulations. If any of those get proven in litigation, even that $75 million cap comes off.
A travel agent in Boston might say, well, wait a minute, I'm losing money because I had some tourists who are going to go to Louisiana who now can't go because of the oil spill. Give us some feel for that.
I think it's going to be a question of proximity that, and Professor Hall's right, it's going to have to be sorted out in litigation. It's going to be fairly straightforward and easy to have claims processed for people who are geographically close to the spill, who can show a direct nexus to how the spill has affected the way that they live their livelihood or any personal injuries. But as you spread out further in time and location, that ripple is going to get harder and harder to prove, and that's where a lot of the litigation is probably going to be the most fierce. Unfortunately, it's not something that we've had a lot of case law on yet to really give us a bright line on.
What about the record from the Exxon Valdez spill?
Exxon Valdez, we actually had litigation on the tort claims that actually stretched on for up to 20 years. Much of that fighting was over punitive damages, which originally were at $5 billion for Exxon, but were ultimately trimmed down in a U.S. Supreme Court decision last year to only $500 million. Given the fact that we have a spill here that actually impacts multiple states, a wide variety of economic activity, and the fact that we're dealing with a spill that's now under new laws that weren't in place when the Valdez spill took place, we're probably looking at even longer period of litigation and probably much more complex legal issues.
Professor Hester, probably nobody's going to go to jail. They're just going to pay out a lot of money.
Absent some very unusual new facts coming to light, I would agree with Professor Hall. The real consequences of any criminal conviction actually may not be the fine that gets paid, as it might be restitution payments that get made as part of a criminal settlement or in debarment from federal contracts that BP might or others might otherwise have.
Okay. Gentlemen, thank you both very much.